Here we have a model sent in by Francisco. I think we looked at the same one last week, but he's now done some hair and some additional stuff here. Francisco says, "Hey Follygon, I was wondering if you could critique this bust. I put a lot of work into it, and by so, the head, hair, eyebrows, eyes are complete. This is the continuation of the Giorno, Giovanna, which I think is the one that we looked at last week. I think it looks really similar to him, and that's my objective, so if you could try to notice stuff you think are different from the original character, I would be glad to know." Some observations. Let's see. Hair, I think I nailed the form, but the geometry is kind of messy and too high, and I have no idea how to lower it without destroying the shape. Also, I'm not planning on doing the braid. The piece of clothing, by mistake, I let my subdivs freeze, and now if I activate them, it gets all messed up. No worries. Overall body and clothing not finished. Also, I would like to think if the level of stylization are kind of similar for all the parts of the character. Thanks for the past critiques. I really appreciate it, and have a great day. Well, thank you, man. It's very kind of you. And let's take a look. So you have, I'm not sure what material you have on the face, so I'm just going to sample. You know what? Here, we'll just turn off all the poly paint and just look at the sculpt. So we'll take a look here. Maybe we can turn on the poly paint for your eyes, and that'll take a nice look here. So let's see. There's a few things that kind of immediately stand out in the hair, which is kind of what we can talk about first. You mentioned you wouldn't be doing the braid, which is fine. I don't think it's a super complex shape, but I think you have too much form going on here in the hair, and the overall general shape isn't really matching what I'm seeing here. So I would probably take the time to Dynamesh a lot of this together up here and start sculpting into the larger shapes that we are seeing in the silhouette. So you've kind of taken this overall kind of pointed shape, this textured hair insert mesh, and you've just kind of repeated that everywhere. Whereas instead, we kind of want to think about the larger chunks that are a little bit more unique, and then probably start to add some texture on top of that. As for this part in the front, these three kind of swirly shapes, I think instead of using a depressed kind of conal sphere here, I'd probably wrap around the hair, kind of like a little bit of a spiral, and then kind of blend that into the rest of the hair like what we're seeing here. So to do that, just so you can kind of see what the next steps would be on this, because this is, like I said, just I don't think this is the right direction that you want to be heading here. Let me turn this off here. Don't want a texture on my brush. So let me try Dynameshing this and just see what happens, because I don't know how you made this. All right, cool. So from here, I know I've kind of butchered your hair, but I think to start getting in the correct direction, this is the direction that we want to start heading in. So let me just remesh this, see how low we can go very quickly. All right, so again, we're looking for these kind of larger form changes going on here. He's got some pretty crazy hair, but if I were you, what I would probably start doing is using some kind of insert mesh brush or curve brush to start getting these larger shapes blocked out, which is kind of what you've done with the lower portion, but what I would start doing, we got a cube tube brush here that I'm using. Just start kind of shaping this into that most basic form there. So let me add in some quick subdivs. I'll try to do this very quick with just my move back face masking brush and just start kind of pushing and pulling some of that around. And here we'll just kind of Dynamesh this really low. I'm just trying to get this super basic form. Give that some more thickness. And we're kind of coming up and got a little bit of an S curve here. So we'll start to get that. I like to use move brush with AccuCurve to pull really sharp points. And you're probably gonna have to take a while on this to match the exact shape. And I'll try to do this, like I said, fairly quickly, but starting to get there slowly but surely. That's probably a little bit too long. Instead, we probably want more width. A little bit more shape this way. Kind of blending down and wrapping around to about that midline. Sure, something like that. And then I think you're gonna have to do this a few times here to start getting these, like I said, just these larger chunks. We don't want to have this be super repetitive with the same brush stroke like what we had here. It feels very awkward and it doesn't really match the hair that we're seeing from the kind of larger, most basic shape. So play around with that, and then I would take some time to just Dynamesh and blend these in together. Like I said, this was done just very quickly, so I don't know, it could probably use quite a bit more just form change up on top, starting to change some angles. Whoops, wrong brush. I want to sit here and sculpt one chunk of hair for our whole critique though, so we'll say I think you get the idea in the direction that we're heading in. So that's one chunk, right? One chunk. Start blocking out the rest of these chunks and start merging them all together into the base form of your hair. And then like I said, for these, you know, we can see these lines, so there's obviously some additional form going on here. These are actually connected. That's unfortunate. So let me just kind of do a quick little chop there. And give these a quick Dynamesh. Get rid of that topology so that ZBrush doesn't freak out on us. And then it looks like there's just some more additional shape going on here than what we see in your sculpt. So working on that. The shape here is, I think, a little bit more rounded up top. I don't think there's quite as much of that angle that you have going on there, so just kind of play around with that. And spend a little bit of time, whoops, there, we'll cut that in a little bit deeper, a little bit more. Might be nice to do this with radial symmetry as well, but I was trying to do it quick. So just kind of play around with that area and start shaping that up a little bit closer to what we are seeing in our 2D concept. It looks like maybe there's even like a third little rivulet in this middle piece. And then from there, the part that might be a little more difficult kind of going on is going to be blending that into the rest of the hair and getting that to feel like it makes sense. So just kind of, ooh, that's fun. Just kind of Dynameshing these together and starting to play with, you know, how you're going to connect these up and try to get a little bit of a nice transition between those. And maybe you can still play around with making that feel like it's a little bit more kind of rounded and attached on there. I think that'll help you out. Cool, cool, cool. Well, that's all I'll say about the hair. Just pay attention to those larger forms, and I really think that'll help push this in the right direction. In terms of the face, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here. In terms of accuracy to what we're seeing here, though, the face is a lot flatter in the 2D, kind of just coming from the profile if we want to match that. I think I actually like the depth that you have in here a bit more than this kind of style, and that's more of just a preference on the JoJo anime style. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a few things that you can do here to kind of improve this. If you're going for accuracy, though, I would say definitely flatten up the face a bit more. The eye shape is quite a bit different than the eye shape that you have. If we're looking here, it's kind of got this kind of trapezoidal eyelid shape. So we got 1, 2, 3 different lines, 3 different distinct breaks and hits on that top lid, and then the bottom one's a little bit more rounded. So I would say pay attention to that, as well as the shape of the nose here. You got more of a realistic nose, which I think is fine if that's what you want to go for, but got more of like a triangular kind of deal going on here. And then for the lips, I think you've gotten pretty close here. I don't know if you have a mouth bag or not. Do you? Mouth bag, it looks like you do. All right, cool. So let's try opening up this mouth a little bit. We got we got some stuff going on here. Give me a second while I try to create an actual decent selection out of this geometry. Let's try that again. I'm not sure if are those accidentally connected there, or so I'm not really sure what's going on with your mouth bag here. I was trying to select this area, but it looks like this geometry might be connected and sewn together here, which kind of completely defeats the purpose of a mouth bag. So yeah, you have a little bit of a hole through there. So that's not really super helpful in terms of actually creating a mouth bag. So you want that mouth bag to encompass the entire width of your mouth. It'll make it much easier to work on your lips so that you can get in there and start sculpting on the actual separation between those. So that would be my advice. Create a functional mouth bag that will actually allow you to open up your mouth and work on your lips a little bit better. Right now, your lips are feeling, the silhouette here isn't exactly what we would want to see in terms of the hits and breaks happening there. So look at the angle of the lips here, how they're kind of dipping in a bit more for that upper lip. So that's more of the angle that you would want to see there. And then just getting some more of that volume on the lower lip so that we're not getting such a kind of sheer cliff face wrapping around that area there. That's all I'll say about the lips. Other than that, I think there's some good stuff going on here. Brows maybe a bit wide or long, a bit heavy, sticking out very far. Ear shape I think could be defined quite a bit closer to what we're seeing there, whether you're going for this style or a more kind of stylized anatomy. Start to shape those up a bit more. In terms of the costuming, I think there is a lot of work that you can do down here. Like you said, you got the frozen subdivision levels. You can still actually, here, Z-remesh. You got half turned on, so I'll turn that off. And let me see what you got going on here. Try to inspect this a little bit. I would unfreeze your subdivision levels, but I'm a little afraid to because we'll probably get a crash. So I'll just kind of leave it for now and remesh this as is. After I remesh this, I might be able to unfreeze your subdivision levels without it crashing, but I'm not going to try. You'll have to play around with that to fix that. I think you can actually copy a mesh or maybe export it as an OBJ or something like that and re-import it, and you'll get rid of that grossness there, so you don't have to deal with that. Let's see. In terms of the clothing, I would say kind of lower the resolution down here to start getting to something a little bit more workable and start getting this feeling like a bit more clean in some of these areas where it's kind of bulging out here. After you do that, then you can work on seams, getting some of these secondary kind of pieces attached on top. The chest shape, well, actually in general, the chest and torso are very narrow. You're probably going to want to widen this out quite a bit. Get that a lot closer to what we would expect there. He feels very narrow. That was just a quick move, so that's not exactly what it should look like. This is also coming down really far in this area, so there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to need to tweak here in the torso and the pectoral area. I would just start, instead of trying to sculpt some pecs on here right away, just try to get the basic shape of a rib cage first, and then you can work on that a little bit more. The back here is kind of, if we look at this plane change, the way that's wrapping, it feels very awkward, so we're going to want some more volume all around here. So again, block out the basic shape of a rib cage. I think that'll be kind of a good starting point for you, and then you can kind of start playing around with actually creating muscles on top of that. But yeah, I think that's all I'll say on the clothing. I think that's pretty much everything. Again, take some time on the hair to just block out the most basic shapes that we're seeing here in the silhouette, and then how those are blending into the internal shapes. Pay attention to that. Don't just repeat the same texture over and over, or same insert mesh over and over. It feels really awkward. There's some work here that you can do to start pulling out these points to match the concept a little bit more closely. So you can play around with that using like a Move AccuCurve brush. Pay attention to your ears. There's a bunch of stuff in the face you can do to get more accurate to this, but if you're kind of going for a different style, I mean, it's up to you. But that would be my recommendation, is to try to get a little bit closer to the face. Look at the eye shape. Shape of the brow is really heavy. Get a mouth bag. Change the shape of the nose to be a little bit closer to what we're seeing here if you want. Work on that ribcage body, and then start working on that clothing after you've done all that. Cool. I think that'll be enough to get you started moving forward on this. Good luck to you, Francisco.